Hi everyone, I'm Shelley Carson. I'm a lecturer and researcher at the Department of Psychology at Harvard University. My research interests have focused on creativity, psychopathology, and resilience, and the interface among all of these things. When I talked to you last, I think it was right after my book, Your Creative Brain, was released.
That's right.
And that work looks at creativity through different brain sets or brain activation patterns. And I had identified 7 of them in that work. Well, since that time, Margaret and I have been working together to look at brain activation states beyond creativity and how they can be used in a coaching context.
So let me take that opportunity to have Margaret introduce herself to our members.
Hello, I'm Margaret Moore. I'm the co-founder and co-director of the Institute of Coaching and the founder and CEO of Well Coaches Corporation, which is a school of coaching for health professionals.
Great. And you two have been collaborating and presented a program here. Tell me a little bit about that.
Margaret, would you like to start?
Yeah, so I co-authored a book, a Harvard Health book with a psychiatrist, Paul Hammerness, called Organize Your Mind, Organize Your Life, which was based on what we've learned about the brain deficits and attention deficit disorder and how the brain is designed to be organized. And so it's a wonderful review of 6 different approaches to organizing your mind, which is relevant to everybody today because most people are feeling distracted and having difficulty focus with short attention spans. And then as I got, often what happens in a book is that it's the best part's after the book because you then start conversations with lots of people about the topic, and then you also read the latest books that are relevant to your topic. And that led me to imagine a different way to present this material. And it rested on, I've been teaching Shelley's creativity material, and Shelley's been teaching her material to coaches for a few years. And as I got deeper and appreciated it more, I began to wonder whether we couldn't create a brain map for all the brain states that we need to use, or at least all the ones that we talk about on a regular basis, and whether that would help people be more intentional and go deeper if they could see the distinct differences in these states. And that's what came alive for me in Shelley's work. And so then I called Shelley up and said, would you be interested and able to help me with this and build out these other brain states so that we'd have this more robust model for thinking about organizing your mind, which probably ultimately leads and improves creativity, but that's not the only and not the main focus. And so Shelley went to work, and it had been, I think, 3 years or 4 years since you had a deep dive into each of these brain states.
Right.
So it turned out to be an immensely productive and interesting process to go back and forth and say, is this brain state like this, or is it that, and is it the same as this? And in fact, in the last few weeks, Shelley's identified 2 more that we didn't have. And of course, there's endless brain states, but the purity of looking at each one and understanding that strategic thinking is different from linear thinking, and self-evaluation is different from evaluation of something outside, and mind wandering is different from being aware and meta-aware. So when you see all this, you are really drawn in, and so I think it's helping me enormously. I think it's a really helpful tool for people to appreciate what's going on in their minds so they can be more intentional and go deeper and even more agile.
What I think is really important is that Margaret has taken these different brain activation patterns that I've kind of identified based on the neuroscience literature, the neuroscience research that's been done, and she's been able to actually map them in 2-dimensional space, which was very helpful to me. I hadn't ever thought of doing that, and that actually brings out the real essence of each of the different brain states. So I really appreciate that work you've done, Margaret.
So it's a combination of two different view screens that comes out with a larger whole.
And
That's what you're
it
saying.
never could have happened if I hadn't seen Shelley's brain states.
How many states have you mapped so far?
Shelley's map 14.
Okay, can you give me a few examples?
Well, so the two dimensions go from left to right as high executive control, thinking, planning, giving someone directions, following a recipe, to the other side, which is full mind wandering. When you just unleash your brain, you have no ambition, no goals. You're in the shower and you're just in the shower, experiencing the shower.
Sort of the control freak brain versus the laid back brain.
Okay.
Yeah, so mind wandering is daydreaming. We all do a lot of it. And often we're doing it when we really intended to be somewhere else.
And if I understand this correctly, all of these states are present in all of us.
Yes,
It's
the
just
brain.
a question of bringing them conscious.
Right. Now, okay, so let me finish and then I can explain.
Sure.
There people live more in one quadrant than another. So you go from the detail to the letting go and letting your mind wander and daydream. Then the top down is being in your thinking brain, in your head only, not in your sensory brain or you're in your body, coming down to the just experiencing in your body where you feel your knee and your ankle and the breeze and the smells and the tastes and all of those sensations. And so then what you see in people is that people like me who are more linear dominant live more on the upper left side, and the more creative folks live more in the middle on the right. And you see how hard it is for me to go from there to there and vice versa. They're far away in terms of the way the brain works. They're very different brain states. And then almost all of us are so focused on getting things done that we experience very little. We don't experience our food when we're eating. We don't experience the joy of movement when we're walking. We don't experience other people without thinking. And so I think almost all of us have real, opportunities for upgrade there.
Okay. Let me circle back. Shelley, can you describe what you mean by mapping a brain state?
Okay, so my maps are actually diagrams of the parts of the brain that are turned up and the parts of the brain that are turned down as far as activation goes in any particular state. And then Margaret has taken these individual diagrams and put them on her two-dimensional map. I'll give you an example. For instance, in the mind-wandering state, what we see is that the executive parts of the brain, which are definitely located on kind of the lateral or outside parts of the prefrontal brain, are turned down. And the center, the midline parts of the brain, here going all the way back, the volume is turned up there. And that would be an example. We would actually have a diagram of that, and that would be an example of what a particular brain activation state looks like.
So you were working with what kind of brain scans?
There's all different kinds of information that goes into these, including brain imaging studies, pathological studies, so that if somebody has an injury to a part of their brain, then we can look at what aspects of cognition or emotion are damaged or changed by that. So we can also look at the effects of drugs. I'm not just talking about street drugs, but also pharmaceutical drugs that target particular that target particular neurotransmitters and how that affects the brain. So we're looking at a lot of different information from neuroscience and psychopathology that can inform these brain states.
Great. Okay, so one of the things that our coaches ask us repeatedly is to give them information about how they can actually access and use this kind of work or any of the work that we present. How can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, one of the things that we're trying to do in our work together today is present some exercises that will help people get into particular brain states. And Margaret's doing a very good job of also telling people when they're in that brain state, what is that good for? When should you be using that? And the one thing I will tell everybody who's watching is you can't do it on a one-time basis. All of these things take practice. So the goal, just like learning meditation or the other skills that coaches use, depends on practice. The more you practice it, the better able you are to use it and to teach it to others.
Kind of like building muscle?
Exactly.
Okay.
Like learning to shoot hoops.
Okay.
You may know cognitively how to do it. You may know the procedure, but until you have practiced over and over again, you won't be real proficient at it.
Okay. I think it might be helpful to get a couple of examples that you've used.
Right, so the way we're presenting our workshop today, and in fact, we just published an article in International Coach Federation Coaching World in August that actually has a quick description of each of the brain states and how a coach would use them in a coaching session.
Oh, great.
So what we're doing today is explaining when to use this in a coaching session, so that you know where you should be in your brain in different parts of the session. So, for instance, you would prepare checking a checklist, getting your self-organized for your session. So then you're in your thinking brain. Then you might do a little experiencing open awareness or meta awareness. How am I feeling? Do I need to settle my emotions a little bit? Or am I hungry? Do I need to get something to eat or to drink? And then you move right into rapport, and that's a unique brain state. How do I sync up? How do I have a little mind meld with my client, the social brain? And then from there, you're moving into collaboration and flow. We actually, there's probably another brain state in between collaboration and flow, which is relational flow. So there's probably a hybrid there, but that's when you see the brain maps, we use orange, blue, and red, and the brighter the orange, the more activation. And in the collaboration brain state, it is gorgeous. Like the amount of action, you see the social brain in full flight when two people are combining brains, and you look at that and say, okay, that's where the nuggets of coaching happen. And then as you move through, you might be a little agile. You might move in from, you've been working at a detail level, and then you may pull back and say, okay, how are you seeing this right now? What's emerging for you? What's the bigger picture here? Is there a pattern here? So that's agility, to go from the detail and back out. And then as you wrap up a coaching session, now you're helping people get into action. So now you bring back the left brain, the left prefrontal cortex, which you sort of left the side of the road for a while as you've been doing these other things. Maybe you even did some creative brainstorming. So now you bring your left brain, you turn that back on. Now you're getting into what are the actions here, and let's evaluate which ones make sense. So basically, we can help a coach understand how they're using a brain. We can also help coaches explain what coaches do in a very cool way, because I'm going to walk you through all these different brain states, which is going to lead to insight for you that you wouldn't have had otherwise, which is why this coaching thing works and why people have change or even transformation. And then I think the next step beyond that is that we can teach our clients how to do this too, so that in their lives, they're using their minds in a way that they're designed to work.
Yeah, the word that occurs to me is flexibility.
That's exactly the point.
Okay.
So once you realize that your brain can be in different brain states, the goal is to move out of your particular mental comfort zone so that you can experience all of these different brain states and then eventually be able to bring them on at will to use them when they're most appropriate. Flexibility is the bottom line.
Great. What's next? Where is this going? Big question.
Well, it's a good question. We've been focusing on building the model, which is an innovation. It's a really, I say this because I'm part of this innovative process, but I haven't been this excited about anything in a long time. So I think it is a tool, and the next step is, in fact, we have a team with technologists, and we're building a course and a mobile platform to get people to practice these tools and these strategies, so that they can build the skills, like getting that ball in the hoop, so that people actually can get better and better at this. So in the end, we need to create the habits of mind. And so when and the model allows this picture of, oh, that's what's happening, which then provides the confidence that maybe I could figure out how to organize my distracted mind, because people don't know where to start. They think I can't think straight. I'm frenzied. I don't know. I don't know how to stop the wandering. People just feel like they have no control. And this framework gives people a sense of, okay, there's something here that I can get my hands on, and I can actually do something about this crazy mind I have.
Cool.
And from the point of view of a researcher, I'll put my research hat on for a minute. One of the things I'd like to do is a randomized controlled test of how well our model is working and how much it's really helping people, so that we can test them before and after they've done practice with our map, and see what kind of changes they actually have experienced. We can look at resilience, attention, just overall self-efficacy. There's a lot of things that we can see whether we've been helpful or not in a empirical way, as well as the experiential way that people are telling us this is really affecting them.
Excellent. Anything else that you'd like our members to know about what you're doing right now?
Well, I think the first audience for this, so I've been talking about it to coaches for a few months. We've been writing about it. We'll write more about it. We're building a course. We would love to have coaches be the drivers of this model. When I was doing a webinar for the International Coach Federation on this model a few months ago, I got the sense from the response that coaches were proud that coaches are building models like this, that we're in fact generating innovation, not just using everybody else's innovations, and that coaches are bringing something to the kind of intellectual foundation of what we do. And so I really see coaches owning this model, and it's a way to help us explain the complexity of coaching with pictures. And that's hard to do. People do struggle to explain what we do and why it's so special. And when you see this, you realize, wow, we intentionally take people through these different brain states. And that's how a coaching session works. And that provides a way of talking about coaching that's really new and different and surprising. And so I think coaches should, obviously I'm enthusiastic about it, but I would love to see coaches really see this as our collective intellectual property. And I'm eternally grateful for Shelley for her pioneering work, because I don't think what you've done in terms of putting the neuroscience literature and all its complexity into what are metaphors. These are pictures. You're not going to see this in a scan, but it gives us a way at getting at something very complex that words cannot describe.
And I thank you for putting it in an applied and practical format that will be beneficial, hopefully, to very many people.